Hello and welcome to Inflection Point Conversations. I'm Michelle Obeda. I'm a 3D artist and the host of this podcast. I'll be chatting with different people who are experts in various CGI fields. Together, we'll take a deep dive into one or more of the disruptive topics that have reached an inflection point in our industry. If you're enjoying this podcast, please take a moment to like, rate, and subscribe. You can also comment and give feedback. I would love to reach more people and grow this amazing community. Today, I'm talking with Arturo Brena. Arturo has built a career in live television, commercials, and film by merging his technical expertise with artistic sensibilities. Over his 20 plus years in the media and entertainment industry, he's collaborated with animation studios and some of the world's largest TV networks as an animator, VFX compositor, and 3D real-time graphics specialist. In 2017, Arturo founded KéexFrame, a New York City-based creative studio dedicated to graphics design, 3D animation, and real-time graphics. KéexFrame has been Unreal Engine's gold service partner since 2020 and contributed to numerous high-profile projects in live TV for sports and news, as well as film and fashion. Arturo has been honored with an Emmy for innovative live camera tracking and real-time graphics, holds 2 additional Emmy nominations, and has received several BDAs for achievements in art direction and graphics technology. He's also my first Emmy award-winning guest on the podcast. Welcome, Arturo.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the fantastic introduction.
Yeah, I mean, you've done a lot of stuff. It's really exciting, and I feel like you have, you're a perfect person to ask about these different kind of genres. Yeah, you're based in New York. We met at 3D&Y, and with a lot of people who were like interested in Unreal Engine and talking about Unreal Engine. This was a topic that I think is really interesting. You've also been on Alex Coulombe's Unreal Engine, unofficial
Yes,
Unreal
yes,
Engine
yes.
podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
absolutely. I mean, it was a fantastic event where we went. I mean, it's happening more and more that people are getting a mixed different type of talents, and that's why it started this conversation. So this is fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. So, so we wanted to talk about, I guess, the inflection point, is like the use of real-time technology, across different industries and like the benefit of cross-pollinating artistic talents in CGI fields, right? Which is something that is really interesting. And I guess, especially when you meet more and more people who are coming into industry and they're learning Unreal Engine for one thing, or they're learning other real-time software, but I feel like mostly now Unreal Engine is sort of leading that, and are able to move around is pretty amazing. So to take it back, you started KéexFrame in 2017, so it's been going for 5, 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, 8 years now.
Yeah, and before then you said like 20 plus years experience working in TV and animated film. You worked at NBC Universal, we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Did you also work in like VFX studios?
So basically, I'll give you a quick summary of.
Yeah.
I'm from Mexico City. I was born and raised in Mexico City, and when I was growing up, there was in Mexico City there was two choices of networks to join. There was
Mm.
I will call it that the right and the left, right? Not necessarily
Hmm.
for political reasons, but let's say
Yep.
there were two flavors, and I joined one of them, which is called Televisa, which is a biggest Spanish-speaking network in the world, right? And
Hmm.
they actually own also Univision, or Univision own them, and there's some relationship there. And
Mm.
so basically, I joined that one, and I was as a 3D animator. So I actually studied computer science or
Oh, okay.
computer software engineering, and
Yeah.
then which was called back then. And then from that point, but I realized that I had like this artistic sensibility, right? So I said, okay,
Hmm.
how can I combine computers and this? And back then, there was no like actual animation career, right? It was either computers or design or the graphic design or things like that. So then I decided to get into this 3D animation, which I found to be the combination. And very
Yeah.
quickly, when I was in that network, I joined Televisa, and when I was in that network, I realized that the perfect combination of those two was real-time graphics. because it was a
Mm.
very technical way of understanding 3D animation. And but real-time graphics for broadcast have been around for many, many years because of the data-driven capabilities of them, right? And the
I
real-time
see.
rendering and data-driven capabilities. So, but it was mostly in the shape of virtual sets and all that. So I started
Mm.
that career in Televisa. I was there for about 9 years, and then I moved to do VFX and 3D in some studios. When then I was offered the opportunity to come to New York, I ended up working with NBC for another 8 something years. So by the time I came here, I had already around 18 years
Mm.
of experience, and then the NBC, and then open KéexFrame. So
Mm.
it's yeah, so it's been a bit of jumping in a couple of
Yeah.
networks, but the common ground during all that has been real-time graphics and the evolution of real-time graphics, 3D real-time graphics, right? And that's what we're talking about. That I have seen the jumping between different industries from different artists, and I've never seen in the industry anything that what is happening right now, which is all the technology is allowing for multiple industries to merge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And start exchanging artists and exchanging talent, which now I'm speaking the same language. Before it was very specific. If you were doing VFX or you were doing a broadcast, there was a very specific workflow and a very specific language, or gaming, right? And now
Mm-hmm.
and now you can speak kind of the same language across all of them. And this is something that I've never seen before in my career, and I'm very excited about it because we are in the point in which the democratization of the industry has generated that more and more people are very, very well educated and versed in 3D and real time, right? Such
Mm-hmm.
is the case of Blender being free, such is the case of Unreal Engine being accessible to everyone. And it's starting to become a point in which you can exchange talent and across all these disciplines. And I think it
Yeah.
has been elevating the quality of all of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's so true. So, taking it back a bit, you mentioned that they're all speaking the same language. Are you talking about coding language, or are you talking a
No,
bit more
workflow
broader than
language.
that?
Yeah,
Workflow language.
yeah, I'm talking about mostly workflow because before you needed to understand, like before when real-time graphics was, let's say, it was not a big thing in film, right?
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago when it was most exclusively a broadcasting, and you will be talking or you will be preparing models as a 3D animator for real time or optimizing them for going on air and keeping 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you would describe that into the film industry, and in which the more polygons and the more detail, the better, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it was a different idea talking to 3D artists in that field. It was one
Yeah.
of them were focused on like, how are we going to make this look as good as possible while it performs? And then this one is like, I don't care how many polygons it has, just make it look fantastic. And now
Yes.
with the power of the GPU power increasing, and more polygons and technologies like nanite being available, in which you can throw a lot of detail into it, then that gap of conversation starts breaking, and
Mm.
everyone's thinking kind of the same in similar terms. So I'm talking about a similar language when it comes to now if you talk to a 3D artist and you speak about real time, everyone understands. Or you speak about what it used to be previs right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
now it's
Previous. Yeah.
becoming more closer and closer to
The
being
final.
final pixel as opposed to just previs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's the same in commercials. In a lot of commercial projects, what you see in Unreal Engine, it is used for final pixel, right? So all that gap of technical communication and workflow communication is starting to break little by little.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's interesting. I also something you said, which I think is worth mentioning, is I guess the difference that that used to be there between, I guess, live TV and film, which is very similar to the difference between doing rendering CGI imagery versus doing real-time imagery, is the how much detail you can put, how many polygons. Basically, rendering 30 frames a second versus it can take an hour or 3 hours to render one frame. It's the same thing in like architectural visualization, for example, and it's the same thing in like film animation. You have all the time in the world to render this. I just want it to look amazing versus you have to optimize. And those two things getting closer and closer together hasn't, I guess, do you think that's what's enabled like the platform to cross and through everything. And I think that's what like Epic Games has been intending, right? Like they've been putting a lot of concerted effort and money in for the last, I don't know how many years, 10, 15 years, to enable all these different industries to be able to use Unreal for what they do, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the technology, like what Epic Games did with Unreal Engine, is it enabled all these industries to cross, right? But
Mm,
what actually pushed that change, I think, has been the creatives, the creative people trying to find better and better solutions for their productions.
mm,
And you mentioned architecture, and that one is one that has been very, very interesting because um, in some virtual productions, right? You need more and more architects, right? And people that understand structure to create some of these virtual backgrounds in Unreal Engine, right? And before it
mm,
was very, very segmented. And if you would be a 3D artist in architecture, you will be doing V-Ray and just showing
mm,
amazing, amazing steels and all that. But now it opens this set of skills that are available also for film and commercials, in which you can bring someone with that knowledge of structure, which before
yeah,
it was an exotic thing to do, to bring someone with that knowledge. And now it's part of the set, it's part of the crew, that everyone that is creating sets for virtual production needs someone with architecture in their roster, because someone's gonna need at some point to create something with a good structure. So that
yeah.
is one very interesting cross-pollination that I've seen, that it's 3D artists from architecture moving into film and television.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I guess that like you having worked in film and television have seen how different related industries have been useful for film and TV. And as someone who's worked in architectural visualization, I've seen it the other way where, I've worked in studios and we've really needed either like someone who understands coding and understands like the coding back end. So like we're the artists making stuff, but we need someone to help us put it together into like an experience or real-time experience. Or we've needed someone who's, got experience with film and animation who can come and help us work on an architectural film. Um, so the cross-pollination really, but in like so far in my experience, it's been largely like we need someone to come and consult, but they wouldn't be part of the workflow so much. And maybe now there's more roles that like if individuals can do a bunch of different things, then your studio could have. So how many people? Just a sidetrack. How many people at KéexFrame do you like work with you?
So perma lancers, then we call it. I mean, basically the common stuff. We are 7 people, but then we
Hmm.
expand depending on different projects, right?
Yeah.
So I do believe in the power of multicultural approach in when it comes to people what we work on. So we bring
Hmm.
people from different countries, different cultures, depending on the type of project. But yeah, so we expand. It's like 7 fix, and then we expand depending on
Yeah.
your project.
Yeah. And for the core like 7 people, like
Mhm.
do you hire people um like with a range of different skills to make up like all the things that you need?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the majority is have 3D knowledge, right?
Hmm.
Everyone's a 3D artist, some sort. But then I'm mostly coming from broadcast, to be completely honest. Like most of the
Yep.
people, because when we started KéexFrame, it was an idea of giving services to the broadcast industry, right? But then if you see our roster of projects, one of the things that has been characterizing us is that every year we try to get into a different technology or a different type of service, which has forced all of us to jump into different industries, right? And
Right.
jump into different workflows. So now I don't think that we will categorize ourselves as broadcast anymore. We'll categorize ourselves as 3D artists with heavy real-time experience. But
Yeah.
we started as that. So there are people with mostly 3D background, especially in live production, but we have been bringing people as well that are like, let's say, into architecture and so on. And I see that more and more. We need these people to be permanent. So it's as I was saying, it's becoming more and more often that you need that expertise. And you were saying that you usually bring someone as consulting, but when it starts becoming more often and often, then you start thinking like, okay, look, we need to have these basically available all the time.
Yeah, yeah, which is I think that's great when that happens, and because when someone is part of the team, they can they can incorporate a lot more. You know, if you come for as a consultant, you're going to consult on the project that you're there for, right? Or the specific problem. But if you're part of the team, you can you naturally bring more and more of your experience and skill set to even in parts where maybe you didn't think we needed to use this thing. Now it's like, well, what if we did this, you know? And I think it does make the kind of work that you can produce richer. Wait, so you're saying that at KéexFrame you're trying to every year you're trying to work in a slightly different field? Not
Yeah,
field.
yeah. So basically, we
Yeah.
have this thing that it's called spring innovation, right? So basically, every spring we get into a new problem.
Yeah.
So just to give you an example, 3 years ago, during the spring, and it's funny because it's something that started happening naturally, and then it became a thing.
Oh,
So
I was going to ask, is this deliberate? No.
at the very beginning, no, but then it started becoming. So now we know that the spring is approaching, and it's when the projects usually go down, and then we have a little bit of money because we started the year with projects, and then we can invest in kind of a new direction. So 3 years ago, we started doing short films, right? We said, okay, we've talked. A couple of us in the team, so we have talked for many years. I want to do a short film. Okay, let's do it now, and we did 2 short films in that spring, which is the same one when I was part of the Unreal Fellowship for storytelling, right? So it was fantastic convergence there. And then the next year we got into complete virtual production. Okay, now we're going to get into understanding what everything ins and outs for virtual production, from mostly from the VAD point of view, so from the virtual art department, creating the environments and all that. Last year, for example, it was all about Fortnite, right? So we said,
So
okay, let's.
Fortnite's the game the Unreal Engine makes. I just want to, just in case anyone listening
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
know.
yeah, absolutely.
So Epic Games Unreal Engine, they make is their biggest game that they use with Unreal Engine, right?
Yes, it's so for the people that don't know, it's Fortnite is two things. One, it's a video game, right? Which is one of the most popular video games in the world. It's a shooting game. Um, eh, and there has tournaments and many people can join. It's a multiplayer game session in which you can 100 people can join a session and play,
Yep.
right? But at the same time, Fortnite is a platform. It's a platform for creating your own games, right? What is called now UGC, user-generated content within the gaming industry. So basically, Fortnite, what it does, it puts a platform that looks very similar to Unreal Engine. So if you have the experience of Unreal Engine, you can jump very easily into this platform and you can create your own experiences. You can create your own games. And Epic
Yeah.
Games puts the platform to publish them really quickly. So it allows for cross-pollination, as we are talking, right?
Yep.
Our topic. It allows for studios that probably don't have the expertise of gaming per se to start
Mm-hmm.
jumping into creating games. And
Yeah.
for us, that was last year. We said, okay, so how we know Unreal Engine, we have this platform to publish really quickly. How can we get that a game into our ecosystem? And actually, I was thinking, like, talking about architecture, there have been, for example, some architecture projects now done inside Fortnite as well, in which
Oh, cool.
yeah, someone wants to promote a specific space in architecture, and you can put it there, and then you can, within Fortnite, with your character, you can go and like explore it and so on. So
Oh, do you mean like real buildings that are actually being built, or
absolutely.
just as yeah, that's cool. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it's
Mm.
basically Unreal Engine, but then connected to the Fortnite
Published.
ecosystem. Yeah, and
Yeah,
published
so
as a
people
game.
yeah, so like anyone who's playing the game, once you publish it, other, anyone in the public who has Fortnite can go and
Correct.
experience your yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and that talking about cross-pollination, that's kind of the, a
Yeah.
huge remark, right? That now even you can bring an architectural project into a gaming platform, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which with everything that that entails, with not only the talent, but now also the audience. You're tapping into a new type of audience that probably has
Mm-hmm.
never experienced an architectural or architectural thought environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think cross-pollination goes across many things.
Yeah, and I guess another aspect of the cross-pollination might also be um people's backgrounds who are using it, right? So maybe you have a lot of very young users who I know Fortnite is very popular with, younger users. Maybe you're introducing, young video game enthusiasts into the worlds of architecture, but maybe also other things. Like if there's like fashion stuff there, I know that there's like a lot of like market in terms of things that you can buy and sell. Is that right? In
Uh,
Fortnite as well?
yeah, I mean the around by December of last year, there was over 300 branded collaborations within Fortnite, just to give you an
Right.
idea. So basically,
Hmm.
all sorts of brands have gotten in there, right? From food brands, clothing brands, or car brands, and everything. So, and because they want to appeal, like I feel that my generation, when we think about Fortnite, we think about kids, but it's actually not true.
Yeah.
Those kids have grown, and now they are
Yeah, no,
like
I'm thinking the same.
yeah, exactly. Like it's people between 14 and 26 years old.
Mhm.
So now they are like young adults that they have their own
Kids, they're still kids,
capabilities.
26.
And they have their own buying capabilities. And it's like, okay, so how do we consume this media now? Right.
Mm.
And so yeah, but yeah, they're still kids, that's for sure.
No, that's so cool because also, when you work in industry, whatever industry, if you work there for many years, obviously, more and more there are younger people who are being hired and brought into the team, and there's always stuff we can learn from them. So, knowing that there are, people who maybe grew up playing Fortnite, understanding the real-time game world now coming into an industry, whether it's the VFX industry or if it's architecture or if it's visualization or something else, they're coming in with this understanding and interest in real-time worlds and can bring that to whatever they're working in. I was also wondering, just a thought, like, because I didn't quite realize how ubiquitous, well, how cross-pollinating Fortnite is. Is it like a more successful version of what the metaverse is supposed to be? Like,
Well, I think
I
I
haven't
think
played it
it's
myself.
Uh, you should. It's interesting to as a 3D artist to
Mm,
understand the capabilities of this new platform or this new thing. I think um, it is the idea of what many people conceived as the metaverse originally, and
yeah.
a lot of people were rushed to see it materialize. And when it didn't materialize very quickly, then people thought that it was dead, right? But then
Mm,
now I feel that companies like Epic Games, Roblox, some others are putting the ground base for that original idea, which was a bunch of IP lives in a single place and a bunch of
Yep.
people can join and experience things created either by companies to put there or by users just to expose their own worlds or their own ideas, and everyone
Yeah.
interacts in the same environment. And it's very, very interesting phenomenon that is happening within, let's say, Fortnite, in which there's so many different types of IP now that you can enter, and you can be in the same room. You can see someone as a Ninja Turtle next to SpongeBob, or
Yeah.
next to someone from X-Men, and you start seeing this exchange of IP, and all of them watching a concert of Ariana Grande, right?
Mm.
And at the same and exchanging ideas, and exchanging and competing towards a physical price, right?
Mm.
That
Yeah.
it's actual real money and things like that. So it's starting to become a place in which people go to interact overall, and not just a game anymore. And that's why I believe this new UGC platform is starting to push more and more games that are not non-shooting games, that are
Mm-hmm.
just games, or to just places to hang out and so on. So yeah, I think that it's materializing as what some people thought it was going to be, the metaverse.
Yeah, because I know that when we talk about metaverse, I guess most people kind of think of Meta, like Facebook's kind of metaverse that came very quickly and looked terrible and no one used it, right? I remember when VR was getting really popular again, what, 15 something years ago, and I read like the book Snow Crash and Ready Player One, and like this which were written what, like in the 90s or something, but this sci-fi idea of what a metaverse would be, which there were like interesting parts of it, and also dystopian parts of it, obviously. But the idea of making it quite quickly doesn't actually make a lot of sense, and actually kind of it would, I think it makes a lot of sense for it to happen, like to evolve slowly, and if that's what Epic Games is allowing, because first of all, you need the platform to be available to a lot of people, and you need to take time for people to learn how to use it, because I think with Unreal Engine, it's so powerful and really robust. There's a steep learning curve, which is what I found, in the past few companies I've worked at, to get people on board using Unreal Engine. Actually, it takes a bit of time, and whether people want to invest the time or not is a decision. And so if you're already using it, and if you have people who know how to use it, then you're already kind of part of the way there. Then people will start using it more and more, and then you can build this world, which, someone just needs to make the platform, which sounds like it could be Fortnite, or, like you said, Roblox. I also haven't played that, and I was
Yeah, I mean,
interested in that
I
too.
think that the first step to create that, and it's very interesting that this conversation is going in the metaverse
Yeah.
direction. But it is. I mean, I feel that the first step for um creating something that appeals to everyone is educating people, right? And is the
Yeah.
education that everyone gets. And for the education, we need the democratization of those tools. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that was the first inflection point, right? Was to
Mm.
democratize all the software and
Yeah,
say,
making it free.
let's make it free so people can learn it, and then just change the monetizing models in order for be based on what you create with the software, as opposed to be based on learning my software. And
Mm-hmm.
then that allowed for many people to start creating their own content, which inevitably will create things like Blender, in which now it's winning awards, and it's an Oscar winning software, right? Like in
Yeah.
now, and that sets a platform for many people to start wanting to create more content for their own needs and their own creative ideas. And that is the beginning of what I think as people pushing into the metaverse. The second thing is that the right people from different industries need to start talking to each other of, okay, how do we integrate all these industries into what we want to see in the future as a real-time ecosystem. There's actually a group called the Real-Time Society, which is
Mm-hmm.
led by Jean-Michel.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember his last name, but
Yes,
Jean-Michel.
yes, yes.
And that's what they are trying to do, for example, right? They are putting like many people from different industries to talk about like what is the future of real time, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and and that in some way or another, that's gonna also start the conversation of creating this interoperability idea of like we can exchange technology, we can exchange assets and everything in a single platform. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we are slowly getting into that, and that goes back to the cross-pollination. That is happening the same in which now everyone talks the same language, everyone has the same tools, so the industries become one more subset of a global graphic production strategy, right?
Yeah.
And a global graphic production platform, and everything subsets as opposed to just being completely separate, which is
Yeah. So I guess we've been talking quite a lot from the sort of company level,
Mhm.
like kind of larger scale, bringing it to like an art, like individual artist scale. Do you think it's better for an artist to have experience working in different CGI positions to learn a big range of skills, or do you think it's better to like focus and be like a master of one?
That's a great question. I believe in the power of generalists like myself.
Generalist, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a generalist myself.
Hmm.
And I have seen that it has really benefited when this fast-paced environment graphic evolution that we have, it helps a lot when you have done a little bit of everything. If I could give an advice to artists, I would say try to be a generalist, or at least understand the world of a generalist, just because the technology is changing so fast that you have to
Mm.
develop the muscle of learning new technology every time.
Yeah.
Like as a generalist, you have to switch between 10 different pieces of software in one single project, and you have to
Hmm.
kind of know the shortcuts and know the language of each one of them. Like some of them have gone very different than others. There's absolutely no similarities between building something in ZBrush than building it in Maya, right? it's
Yeah.
it's a complete different methodology. So
Yeah.
and you have to be versed in all of them. So I believe that this fast-paced graphic platform evolution, it's fertile ground for generalists.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it's important to specialize to have specialists in some fields to elevate the
Hmm.
quality. And I think the idea of maybe being a generalist as a base and then having one skill that is your preferred and you evolve in that one might be the best formula. But who knows, right? Who
Yeah.
knows what's best? But what I've seen is that usually journalists have a easier time adapting to new technologies and taking them from all perspectives. Quick story, when I did the Unreal Engine Storytelling Fellowship, um, I realized that there was many people from huge studios, Pixar, ILM, like all of them, um, and the people that were very specialized were having a harder time creating their short film. In back then, you had to create an entire short film, still 3 minute short,
Yes. Yeah.
in something like a month, and they were having a harder time adapting to creating the entirety of it, right?
Hmm.
The lighting, if there were lighters, the lighting would look amazing, but there were so many other things that they had to create, and that like ring a bell for me. I was like, wow, this is interesting how generalists are having an easier time
Yeah.
completing the task, which is more and more common, and especially what's happening right now in our industry, that obviously has been huge close downs, and there are many artists without unfortunately without a job, and it's the skills are will have to evolve. All of us
Yeah.
have to evolve our skills in order to start uh, creating the new generation of what's coming of our industry, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's interesting that one thing you mentioned, the muscle. I totally agree. Like having the muscle to learn new software as well as like new workflows and new ways of working, is really important because whether you choose to or not, at some point you might be forced to try something different and use something different. And it's really good to be able to adapt. It's also funny because I feel like when I first started out, like I studied architecture and I went into video games, and I feel like the advice was really given to me like you need to specialize because if wherever you want to work, if you want to work in games or animation or film, you need to be a master of one thing. And I think that's definitely changed now, where that's actually like people who are a master of one thing could easily be evolved out, like you can age out of that position, and you've spent 30 years doing this one thing and you haven't kept up with all the new other technologies. In the meantime, whatever industry you've been working in, let's say you've been working in games, that industry's changed a lot so quickly. So like you're already like out of date if you haven't learned that new stuff. And it's like it's a shame for the people who have sort of decided to specialize unless they happen to be lucky enough to like be able to sort of be in demand.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
for
I think the challenge comes, I think it's more of a labeling challenge, right?
hmm
Because I have found that a lot of people that label themselves as, let's say, if you label yourself as, I am a lighter, right? I do lighting. Um, then the people that are hiring, if they don't have a very specific lighting need, they will probably just skip or like keep looking or something like that. But then
hmm
I found out recently that I had a chance to look at many different resumes and portfolios. I was realizing that people that were considering themselves lighting, they also had like a huge generalist background, right?
right.
But they labeled themselves as a lighting artist. And
Ah,
so what I would say is like maybe sometimes is, yeah, like I'm a generalist specialized in, let's say, lighting, or
yeah.
something that tells the rest of the industry that I can do these other things that probably it hasn't been my specialty for in my last job, or or it's not the one that is my principal or my core passion, but I can do all these things.
Mm,
Um, because I have found out that many people that categorize themselves as one of them only, let's say I'm an animator, right? That's it. Then you see that they are fantastic in all the generalist tools, right? And everything else. So I think it's more a matter of how you label yourself. There's a fantastic book in Spanish that is in translation. It says like when you label yourself, you die, right? Like
oh,
it,
okay.
it's something, and it's not talking about the work industry. It's talking about just in a personal matter, but
hmm
it kind of applies in the same way.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah. That's
just
so
don't
interesting.
self-define yourself because you will limit yourself to
Yeah.
just one specific thing. Is like be open to the change.
That's so interesting. That's really good advice, actually. I think I know a lot of people who, when they're looking for jobs, they could very honestly call themselves generalists, because of the different range of experience they've had, but maybe they think that that's a negative, do you know? So like they feel like they need to like I think people get given different advice, and I think it's quite good advice to approach places going like look at all the different things I could do. Yeah, every time that I've changed jobs, which like in the past 5 or 6 years, unfortunately, I sort of been have to hop around. I have had like a taster of lots of different kinds of industry and skills, and I found it quite useful to go like, what do you need? Like, I could probably do that. I could probably do that. Not super well, but maybe good enough for what you need. And you find yourself becoming very, very malleable.
Manual, yeah.
And you know, I've found that some industries find that useful. Well, and some industry don't. Like, I remember when I wanted to leave I worked in video games. I was doing 3D environment art, right? So I was making buildings. And I thought, well, it'd be cool to do this for film. And I found it very difficult to get into film because people were saying, well, you have all this experience doing environment art for games, but there's other people you're competing with for this job who have already experienced doing it for film. So that small crossover,
Yeah.
like the cross-pollination wasn't, I don't know if it wasn't possible or just like you're not desirable if you didn't have the experience in it. And maybe, I don't know if that, because I'm talking like 15 years ago plus, whether that's actually changed. Like, do you think, your point of cross-pollination is being more and more possible, maybe because of the software? It's like,
Also because of, sorry to interrupt you, I'm so sorry.
yeah, no,
Um,
go ahead.
Sorry, because I think mostly because the centralization of the productions, right?
Mm,
Like if we see more and more smaller productions, uh, I mean, we just saw it in the Oscars again right now with Flow. So
yeah,
more and more smaller productions, or last year the Oscar for VFX with Godzilla minus one, right? Um, Smaller productions are starting to excel, and there's more and more of indie productions than just the big centralized ones. So the
right.
decentralization of those is allowing for artists to jump between different skills within the same production, right?
Mm,
Uh,
yeah,
and I think before, when you were working on a video game, on a AAA video game, and there was 300 other artists, yes, you need someone just to do the building, or even just to do the windows of the buildings, right?
yeah.
But now maybe in a smaller production, because of the democratization, decentralization, cross-pollination that we are talking, maybe a smaller studio can create a AAA game,
Mm,
right? So
yeah,
then, but instead of doing it with 300 artists, they do it with 40 artists that then they jump between different skills,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Such is the case of the new game that came out. Um, it's a monkey. I can't remember the name. Anyway, but it's a AAA game that was done
hmm
with a little bit of people, right? Or a
hmm
shorter amount of people. So, and that keeps repeating the we have to pay attention how the industry is like smaller teams are starting to come with bigger productions, and just
Yeah,
because
yeah,
the tools are allowing it now. But
yeah.
as a 3D artist, you have to be aware that, okay, maybe I'm not going to work, maybe the jobs of being just creating the buildings are going to be less than the jobs of, okay, I can create the buildings, but I can also create the streets, and I can also create this,
Yes.
or I can also
And the
do a little bit
props
of
and the
element.
characters. Yeah.
Exactly. So starting to diversify yourself, it might be a good idea, especially in our changing industry.
Yeah, yeah. That's really cool. That's a really good point. So basically that's where want to maybe push yourself into becoming more of a generalist, learning the different skills. Because also I think a lot of people really like I would say I think there's like almost two different people fall into two different kind of camps. Like some people love just specializing in their one thing they're good at, and some people love diversifying and doing a bit of everything. And I wonder whether that's personality types because it really people feel one way or the other. I've always felt like what do you call it? Jack of all trades, like
Mhm.
master of none. And I was worried about that but I heard recently, I can't remember the quote, but that, this saying, Jack of all trades, master of none. But there's another part to that quote, which is actually quite positive for being the Jack of all trades. I can't remember what it is now, but
Mhm.
like, I think, if you're brought up like understanding that's a bad thing to be a generalist, you're not going to embrace it, you know. But some people thrive on just being specialists. Some people thrive on doing a bit of everything. So it's
And I
good to
think there's room
understand.
for both. I think
Yeah.
it's fine. I think there's a phrase in Spanish that if you are a parrot, you will, if el que es perico en donde se es verde, which is you can be, if you're good at what you do, you can excel regardless of the conditions, right? If you're really good at
Mm,
what you do. But that is, it's the room for excelling in a changing industry. I think that we have to pay attention of what's happening in the industry. and realizing that, yeah, I mean, if I'm the best at doing something specific, but the industry is requiring less and less of this specialization, and then maybe I open myself to do other things. I mean, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think it's just one is personal preference. Yes, I completely agree. There's people that I have seen people that they can, but they cannot animate whatsoever. They
Mm-hmm.
move a ball and it looks like horrible, but they do amazing lighting because that's what they enjoy, and that's fantastic. Um, so there's no right and wrong when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I guess a lot of artists, we are now in kind of survival mode in trying to say, okay, what's happening in the industry that is changing so much,
Mm-hmm.
that all these studios are changing, closing, and that the industry is changing, and that we're getting less work here and there, or different type of work, and with different technologies coming, graphic technologies coming, AI, and so on. And so, like, okay, let me find where this is going and what is the best strategy for surviving. And I think that's why I mentioned that maybe opening to more generalist roles, it might be good, especially
Yeah.
with the cross-pollination due to the technology.
Where do you think the VFX industry is going? And like you mentioned, I know that like over the years there's been more and more big studios closing, and then recently in the last like couple of weeks there was some really big ones like The Mill, right? And there's another
Mhm.
one.
Technicolor in
Um,
general.
yeah, technical. So like where do you think the VFX, do you think that VFX in film and animation and broadcast is going to smaller studios? Like do you think that's where the future is, or what do you think?
I honestly, I don't wanna, I don't wanna throw any uneducated guess,
Guesses, yeah.
but I mean, I do believe that there's definitely a change. I think
Mm-hmm.
that all of us are trying to understand what that change is.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that uh, the VFX graphic industry is being affected. Um, Less and less, the fluency of projects, and I'm talking as a studio, the fluency of projects is changing. We used to have a very constant flow of the same type of projects, and now, yeah, well, sometimes we get many others, but it's a different type of projects. Like the
Mm-hmm.
clients, especially the clients, are looking for different type of things that are done in different ways than before. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think I don't know where it's going to end, but I do
Mm-hmm.
believe that there's a change and that we have to prepare ourselves for the biggest change, right? We have to prepare for what happens if everything goes to indie studios. What happens to if it becomes more, projects become more crowd sourced, right, as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to centralized. And I think that we have to prepare ourselves for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that is also very important, let's say, that's why it's important to have relationship with other artists and do whatever we're
Mm-hmm.
doing right now, like having these conversations, going to events, talking to more artists in order to understand a bit better, like what's actually happening, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah, and that really comes back to the whole cross-pollination, right? Like the positive part of the cross-pollination, the way that it's more possible now, is maybe something that can be sort of encouraged, celebrated, like people can start looking. Like I feel even after having this conversation, there's, people I know who may be looking for jobs, and I feel like recommending them like try these other industries. You might your other skills and experience might be useful in those companies,
absolutely.
and just give it a go, see if they're looking for that. And I think that's great. I think it's also great that KéexFrame is your company, has that way of thinking, because I guess you're going to be looking outwards, you know. Maybe that's what all indie companies are kind of like, or smaller studios. But I think it's a very open. I consider it very open-minded when companies look with for people with different backgrounds. I think it makes your team richer. Your richer like amount of experiences, as well as like people with different cultural backgrounds, different ages, different like everything, right? Different like work experiences. I think it just makes like you're gonna get, you know, versus a company where people all have the same, they study the same thing and they've had the same experience. Um, you don't have the same creative pool like of
Yeah,
resources,
no,
right?
the diversity in the artists, it's everything. It like
Yeah,
for especially in the creative industry when you're doing design or visual proposals, you can feel when a studio has a style and has repeated that style over and over and over and over.
yeah.
And sometimes it's good just because the client says like, oh, this is a studio that does bubbles. Okay, so I want bubbles. I'm gonna go to this
Mm.
studio. That's fine. But for us personally, we prefer to be changing styles and changing technologies and changing. This is what we enjoy talking about, like what it's like your passion. Our passion, I think, comes from trying new things all the time.
Yeah,
um, and finding everything within the realm of graphics and real-time graphics and everything, but trying new flavors of it. I think
yeah.
that's our main passion.
Yeah. Well, Arturo, thank you so much for coming on here and like sharing, I mean, your very wide, diverse range of experiences and also like specifically, you know, tying it to like other CGI fields. It's been interesting to talk about. I'm also excited to see what your new spring project is gonna spring up on you. Your new
Me
challenges
too.
are gonna be.
No, thank you so
Maybe
much for the invite. I mean, it's fantastic to have this conversation. As I said, all of us become richer as colleagues, as the industry,
yeah.
as artists when we have these conversations. So this
Yeah,
needs to
for
keep
sure.
happening in any realm.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And you know, maybe you can come back on the podcast in a few months' time and tell us like, oh my God, I had to do this is where we've now pivoted for like the new season. And that could be so interesting too.
And we are doing tacos now for people. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean, I would love to come back and have a part two of this conversation and see what happens in a few months from
Yeah.
now, because it's gonna be something's gonna change. It's gonna be completely
Yeah.
different in a year from now, so it will be very interesting to do a follow-up.
Yeah. And we didn't even talk about AI. That's for the next one.
Exactly. Oh, wow, that's another big one.
And not
Yes.
too many new topics. But yeah, thank you so much, Arturo. And it's been fantastic. Really interesting.
Thank you.
That was a really interesting conversation with Arturo Brena. I really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it too and found it interesting. If you want to check out KéexFrame, see KéexFrame.com. I put the link up there and yeah, check out their work. And I hope you get inspired by this. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed it, please hit follow or subscribe, like, share it with your friends, and see you in 2 weeks. Bye.